My name is Giles Dooley and I'm a photographer, and I want to talk today about my new project, Legacy of War. The project is going to be a series of portraits. It's also going to be documentary photography and still lifes of some of the weapons. And it's going to look at a lot of the different themes around the idea of legacy of war. So it could be contamination from landmines, from UXO. It could be the psychological damage of conflict decades on. It could be contamination in terms of things like Agent Orange or depleted uranium. So really, again, a lot of different themes, but a similar theme or a similar story, which is that war affects people decades after the conflict ends. I've started the photographic phase, the first phase of the project. In the last few months, I've been to Laos, to Vietnam, and to Lebanon. And already I've seen some of the stories that really, for me, sum up what this project is all about. In Lebanon, I met a young girl, 12-year-old girl called Kwala. She is a Syrian refugee. She went through pretty unimaginable horrors during the war. I won't go into the details of those, but living in Lebanon in a refugee camp, she was so traumatized that at 12 years old, she took rat poison to kill herself because she couldn't live with what had happened. I met her, very upsetting, but at the same time, those are the stories that I think are important to tell. And she represents really the youth and somebody that is from a very recent war and yet is living with a legacy of it already and will live with those memories for the rest of her life. At the other extreme, when I was in Laos, I met a woman who was in her 40s. She was born the year the war ended in Laos. So she should have been brought up in peace. But she was brought up in an area where the Americans dropped 1 million cluster munitions in a square kilometre, which is really hard to imagine. So that area, about 30% of those cluster munitions haven't gone off, so there's around 300,000 cluster munitions in that square kilometre. As a child, she was injured twice when working the fields. But last year, when she was out working in a paddy field, literally just metres away from her house, she was with her brother and with her daughter. The last thing she heard was her brother say, "Watch out." And there was an explosion, and she found her daughter and her brother dead next to her. That's 40 years after the war ended, and lives are still being lost to that conflict. So for me, it's very hard to say a war is over. And that's what Legacy of War is saying. It's saying, you know, a war doesn't end when a peace treaty is signed. The Vietnam War ended. Since that war ended, 120,000 people have been injured. So does that really mean it ended? So Legacy of War, I want to try and bring all these different stories together, just to try and get people to think about what war really means and what the long-term consequences of it are. So as I say, it'll be in 4 phases. The first phase is the photography. The second phase is also really interesting. I wanted to make it a collaborative affair. I grew up very influenced by the poetry of the First World War. It's something that still moves me. And I decided I wanted to bring poetry, writing into this project. So I'm working with poets and writers from the regions where I'm photographing, from Syria, from Somalia, from Laos, because I think it will give it another dimension and hopefully make it more accessible to people, but also make you think more. I mean, I think a photograph can be very powerful, but I think combined with this poetry, with this music, it will hopefully really have that impact that I hope it will. So that's the second phase. The third phase will be putting it together in forms of an exhibition and a book. And then the fourth and final phase will be taking it out to schools. Because at the end of the day, this is what this is all about. It's about education. It's about getting people to think. This project in many ways is the culmination of my work and my life. It means everything to me. I mean, this is really just sums up everything that I stand for. But I can't do it on my own, and that's why I need the support of people to help at this stage, the financing of some of the travel, of the costs. I desperately need your help to make it happen.